Hi fans, welcome to the latest episode of Studio Jake. I'm excited to have you on this episode. We're going to cover some not so new things, but also some recent things that I think are interesting. It's going to deal with some news, some entertainment stuff, and I'm going to show off a little bit of my comic book collection. So I hope you're ready for that. Now, sit back, relax, check out my cool Spider-Verse t-shirt that my amazing wife got for me, and enjoy Studio Jake. Okay, welcome back. So, first some old news. Last week, Investigation Discovery, it's a channel that runs crime documentaries and crime shows, investigative shows. It's really interesting. I've written about it on my blog a couple of times. Now, they did this, I want to say a 5-part documentary called Is OJ Innocent? And it was this guy who's putting forward the theory that OJ Simpson's son Jason actually killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman. Now, he hired this forensic expert and this detective, and they went along and they investigated his theory. And it was really interesting to watch. And just so you know, I'm going to give you some spoilers. So if you are a ID addict like I am and you're going to watch it on your Investigate Discovery, go just skip ahead a couple of seconds, and because I'm going to give you, or actually a couple of minutes, because I'm going to break it down. And it was really interesting to watch. They followed up on all these rumors. They followed up on all this information that was coming their way, like Jason's time card at his restaurant, like the fact that there was blood on the passenger side. And I always thought OJ Simpson could have reached over and the blood could have dripped, but the forensic guy was kind of like, there's way too much blood for this to be a reach over, so someone had to transfer it. And then they followed the route Jason would have had to have taken to have gone from his job at the restaurant to his girlfriend's and then to Nicole's house. And they made it, but just barely. There wasn't a huge window. And so they actually followed up on a ton of incredible clues, and you followed along, and they re-interviewed some people, some detectives from OJ Simpson's case, and it was really interesting. And I just found it really compelling how the OJ Simpson trial really captivated us as a nation, and even Generation Y and millennials like me, how we even are into it, and we have these debates. Did he do it? Is he innocent? Is he covering up for someone like Jason? Now, ultimately, and here comes the spoiler part, ultimately, the detective and the forensic expert rule that Jason was not involved in the murders at all. They found no evidence. It was just pure speculation, pure rumor, and though he was a troubled young man, they don't think he actually committed the crimes. And they tell this to the guy who has this theory, and he was totally in disagreement, which this is America, we can have disagreements, but they did think that OJ had a helper. And this comes from OJ's own words. He wrote a fake confessional called If I Did It, which the Goldman family sued to get the rights to and won. And he has this sidekick named Charlie. Now, the sidekick really, all he is kind of, he lets OJ know what's going on with Nicole, and that kind of sets up OJ with a motive, and then they go together, and Charlie's just kind of like, he's there when, he's actually the one who kills Ron. In the fake confession, OJ kills Nicole, and Charlie is the one that actually kills Ron Goldman, I believe. And so they tell this guy who was putting the theory that it was Jason, hey, we believe that OJ did have a helper, but we don't think it was Jason. There's just not enough evidence to corroborate that. And they actually did try to interview Jason in all fairness, but they weren't able to. Obviously, I wouldn't want to be interviewed, so many years later after this heinous murder of which your father is acquitted, but people still think he did it, like me, and whatnot. So, yeah, I kind of understand that. If I was Jason, I wouldn't be on board with that. But the documentary was still good, and last year, the People versus OJ, which was part of FX's crime anthology series, American Crime Story is what it's called, and I thought it was great. Cuba Gooding Jr. was great as OJ Simpson, and I don't know why he got a lot of flack, but John Travolta rocked as Robert Shapiro. I mean, everyone was great. The guy who played Darden, the guy who played Judge Ito, the lady who played Marcia, all of them were great, but to me, Cuba Gooding Jr. and John Travolta as Robert Shapiro, the two of them were great. And also Bill Schwimmer as Robert Kardashian, he was really good. And one of my favorite scenes in that miniseries is he's out with his kids, the ones who are on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Khloe and Kim and all those crazy people who I don't know why they're still famous. And there's a part where he takes them out to dinner, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna be on TV? You're gonna be famous?" And he goes, "Guys, kids, there's more to life than fame." And they're just kind of like, I just think that is exactly. I don't know. That's probably very apocryphal. Apocryphal. That's not a word. It's probably not really true that happened, but I think it's funny. Apocryphal? Man, you're going to be hearing that all through this video. Alright, moving on. So, that's just something cool and that I thought was interesting and whatnot. So anyway, spoilers are over. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to show off something that's really cool in my comic book collection. Now, I am a huge Spider-Man fan. Now, Batman's my number one. Okay, I'm always going to tell you Batman is the best, and yes, I think he can beat Superman. No, I didn't like Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. I thought it was overrated too, and the stuff that was in the deleted scene should have been and a lot of in the scene with Neil deGrasse Tyson that should have been cut. That was a total waste of 3 minutes. Anyway, moving on from that, you can read that review on my blog. Normally, every time I say blog, I give you my blog address, but today I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait till the end to give you my blog web address. So anyway, back to Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my second favorite. And actually, when I was growing up, my parents really monitored the comic books that I was allowed to collect. My parents were great about that. They weren't helicopter parents. They actually paid attention to what me and my sister read and watched, which for me meant a lot. Because when I was little, I didn't understand it. But now looking back, I'm glad they did that. I'm glad they weren't helicopter parents, because I became a better person. And one of the comic books that they let me read was Spider-Man, because for the most part, Marvel Comics was really smart, and they kept Spider-Man clean. They had Jessica Jones was coming out, or it was called Alias at the time, Punisher Max, Deadpool Cable. The X-Men were kind of starting to explore like social issues and whatnot. And so I was really glad Spider-Man kind of did that, but they mainly kept it mainstream, which was really cool, and I'm glad they did that. So anyway, huge Spider-Man fan. Collect comics. I even have some classic Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, but I'm not going to show you those today. I will someday, but not today. I'm going to move to something else. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, Marvel was doing this thing where they were letting other people take on roles of different superheroes. So Thunderstrike, he became Thor for a little while, and he actually, out of all the replacement Thors, he's actually my favorite. I think Jane Foster is totally overrated as Thor. She's not that special. Anyway, besides, they had already done that in a What If. It was old news. I don't know why they dredged that up. Alright, sorry, off the soapbox. Anyway, they were doing things like that, and so other characters were taking over different identities. I think they had like 3 people take on the identity of Warbird. I think there was 2 Magics from the X-Men. And one of the big ones was Spider-Man. So they did the whole Clone Saga thing, and then they did a sequel to the Clone Saga, which continued it on. And they introduced this new character named Ben Reilly. Now, Ben Reilly was, at first you thought he was the clone of Peter Parker, but then you figure out that, or that you didn't figure out, but then they implied very strongly, very heavily, that actually Ben Reilly was the original Peter Parker. And it caused this rift, and Spider-Man and Mary Jane are married at this point, and Mary Jane is pregnant. She tells him she's pregnant. So for 9 months, Ben Reilly is the top Spider because Peter Parker decides to retire. And now, of course, this is comic book timeline, so 9 months actually took way longer than 9 months. And Ben Reilly is the Scarlet Spider, one of the coolest characters. Now, I don't have every issue with him. He of course guest starred in The Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man, I believe The Web of Spider-Man. He guest starred as Scarlet Spider. And but they decided to give him his own comic book series. And it was very short-lived. I don't really understand why. And he also made appearances in the New Warriors. I think, in fact, he joined, and I happen to have... Now, I don't have all of his New Warrior appearances. I'm working on that. But here's one of the first issues where he appeared, and as you can see... Now, you may recognize the New Warriors. They're the ones who caused the Civil War. So, you can see Turbo, Justice, Thrasher, and there's Scarlet Spider. Now, this led to a spin-off. Sorry, I'm working with this here. All my comic books I have in these binders here. And behold, Scarlet Spider got his own comic book series, and I have all of them. Now, this is Scarlet Spider Unlimited #1. There is only one of these, and I have it. And I've done my best to keep these in pristine collection. Here is one of my favorites. This is Web of Scarlet Spider. This one's a little bit more beat up because I've read it so many times. I want to get another copy of it if I can find one. But this is one I'm definitely proud of. Now, Web of Scarlet Spider, The Amazing Scarlet Spider, just Scarlet Spider, and the Spectacular Scarlet Spider. One thing that puzzled me about these is it's different than Batman. So in Batman you have Detective Comics and you have Batman and his other spin-offs, but they all go down their own storyline. Well, what Marvel did was way different. So I just showed you Web of Spider-Man. What they did was the storylines came out 4 at a time. So if you bought Amazing Spider-Man, it might have part 1, and see, this is called Virtual Mortality. This one is like new. I bought this one online. And incidentally, all of these only went to 2 issues. Except for... Oh wait, am I wrong about that? Apparently I'm wrong about that. With the exception... I'll correct myself. With the exception of Web of Spider-Man, the others all only had 2 issues. So, Web of Scarlet Spider, and here he's facing Firestar from the New Warriors. And then a villainous version of Scarlet Spider appears in New Warriors issue 87. And this is Ben Reilly's first official appearance as Spider-Man. Check that out. Not too bad, huh? This is one of my favorite comic books of all time. Ben Reilly was... Because, normally I don't like it when another person takes over the role of a superhero. Okay, Falcon was tired of him being Captain America. I was ready for Steve Rogers to come back. Same when Rhodey became Iron Man. Wasn't a huge fan of that. I think he's great as a standalone hero as Falcon and War Machine. Now, I didn't really have a problem with them because they're proteges, But you know, some random like Miles Morales. Why does he get to be Spider-Man? So stupid. He's just a random character. But still, I'm kind of like, oh well, it's kind of like Dick Grayson becoming Nightwing. You know, he had his own story, and so kind of like the fact that he is who he is. This one I'm especially proud of, but this is the spin-off Sensational Spider-Man #1. This was Ben Reilly's first run at being Spider-Man. Now, Ben Reilly was, I think I mentioned him last time when I was talking, or excuse me, Scarlet Spider, when I was talking about Future Fight last week. And he got a really crappy ending. I know I'm a Christian, I'm not supposed to say crappy, but I just did get over it. He got a really, really crappy ending. So, basically what happens is you find out that Norman Osborn was behind the whole Clone Saga thing. You thought he was dead, he was really alive, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it's a comic book. And Ben Reilly jumped in front of Peter to keep him from being impaled by the Goblin glider. But what made me mad, though, was he wasn't in costume. Like, if you're going to kill... And he died, and you turned to dust. That's how you found out that he was really the clone, and Peter Parker was the original. But what made me mad was he didn't die in costume. Yeah. That really, really bothered me. Well, I found out one of the original writers of the Clone Saga was Tom DeFalco, who we all know is the creator of Spawn. I'm not a huge... Well, actually, I'm not a fan of Spawn at all. I think he's... he makes really crappy movies. But Tom DeFalco himself is a really fantastic writer. I mean, he writes great. He's one of the most underrated comic book writers, right up there with Mike Baron, who created Nexus and Badger. So anyway, well, after Brand New Day, which was what happens is, after the Civil War, in the comic book Civil War, not the movie, but in the comic book Civil War, Spider-Man unmasks himself and reveals himself as Peter Parker, but it causes all these kinds of problems. The Kingpin tries to kill Aunt May, and succeeds, actually. Well, he goes to Doctor Strange and begs him to go back in time, but Doctor Strange won't do it. I don't understand why they've done this before, but for some odd reason, Doctor Strange won't help Peter Parker. So, Mephisto, who we all know is, he's in Marvel comic books, Mephisto is the ruler of hell. He's actually a frequent villain in the Spawn comic books. So he offers Spider-Man a deal. If Spider-Man and Mary Jane give up their marriage, he will reverse back the time. And they agree, and he does. And so everyone remembers Spider-Man unmasking himself, but they forget it's Peter Parker, and it also puts into place like a weird mental block thing. Well, after that happened, Tom DeFalco returned to Marvel and wrote this, the real Clone Saga. And I was hoping that this would become canon, but I don't think it did with Marvel now, sadly. But in this one, Norman Osborn dies again instead of Ben Reilly, and Ben Reilly just kind of rides off in the sunset, and hinting that he'll return. DeFalco has stated that this ending was how he originally intended the Clone Saga to begin. In fact, the length of this graphic novel is what he wanted it to be. I highly recommend this. The artwork is fantastic. It's one of the best. Marvel really put their best foot forward. So check this out. This makes me happy. I know it's really an alternate universe, but it's really well worth it. Now, one final thing. I want you to take a look at this incredible painting. So, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, who is the amazing artist? Is that you, Jacob? Sadly, no, I am not this talented, unfortunately. This is actually from my beautiful bride. She has an incredible Etsy shop called Arte de Rachel, Art of Rachel. And you can find it on Etsy, and you can also find her on Instagram. Check it out. Kind of a shameless plug. She has no idea I'm doing this. In fact, she's not even in town as I'm recording this. So I'm just doing this because her artwork is amazing. You should check it out. And now, it's time to go. Before I do, I want to remind you, follow me on Twitter, @RealJacobBerry. Follow me on Instagram, jacobberry.blog. Also, check out my blog, www.jacobberry.blog. I've got tons of incredible articles. I've got interviews with some incredible women and men, and so much more. Classic movie reviews. I don't think you have to be born in a generation to review their movies. So check those out. Of course, find me on Facebook, author Jacob Berry, and be sure to like me. And last but definitely not least, I'm asking you to support me on Patreon. You can go there, www.patreon.com/StudioJake. It is because of your generosity that creators, writers, videographers, artists like me, we can give you great, free, epic content. That is what we want to do. And so with your support, we can do that. Consider becoming one of my patrons. I would really appreciate it. Thank you in advance. Now, all of you, have a fantastic weekend, and God bless you.